Next generation trivia.
Next generation trivia, indeed. What is the Klingon unit of measurement for distance? A. Jellicoe. B. Moog. C. Herc. Or D. Kelikam. It's not. They're though.
Welcome to a piece of the action. I'm Micah.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be taking a look at The Crew, the quest for Planet 9, or for short, The Crew. I think I didn't even know that was the full name of the game until I read it. So I guess we'll see how integral Planet 9 is to
it is
game.
Totally integral.
Is it?
Extremely. I mean, you can't play this game without really immersing yourself in the quest for Planet 9.
Okay.
I know. We thought High Frontier had a real space travel theme. You have seen nothing yet.
All right, great. Well, this is a pretty new game, right? 2019 by Thomas Singh, so a lot pretty newer than a lot of stuff we've looked at, right?
For sure.
Okay, and so we're going to get into it. Before we do, just a quick reminder of a few things. Our regular reviews come out on the 1st and the 15th of every month, so subscribe to us to check those out. In addition, on the 8th of each month, you can join Eric all by himself with his series Collect My Thoughts, where you collect Eric's thoughts for whatever that's worth. Then on the 22nd, we have Greg with his standalone series, Ars Ludica. Right now, he's talking about schools of board game design. Feel free to subscribe to us to get updates on all of that, as well as like this video, like those videos if you like them, and as well comment to let us know how we're doing. So,
no snarky quips about Greg's private channel. Just me, huh? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I don't know. Your title lends itself more to that. I'd have to make snarky quips about Latin, so I feel like I'd lose some people.
You have to make pretentious quips.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So, but with that, let's go ahead and get into talking about The Crew. First of all, let's get some things out of the way. With The Crew, what is the player count and the runtime for The Crew?
So the box says 3 to 5, which is weird to me because within the official rulebook, there's an official 2-player variant. So it really plays 2 to 5. And if we're talking about counts, I would say, as with most trick-taking games, for whatever reason, it works best at 4.
Okay.
It works at all the player counts okay. I think I'll talk a little bit more about that as we.
Greg and I did play it at 3.
Okay.
So and 2-player. We played 2-player.
Oh, 2-player.
No, we played. Yeah.
That's what I mean. 2-player.
Yeah, 2-player requires you to have like an AI hand, like a dummy hand kind of to play with. But it does work. But I think I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get going here.
Right.
And playtime, I think, I don't know, what do you think? 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes per round?
Yeah, I think about 20 minutes per mission.
Yeah. If it's a trick-taking game, it should be pretty short, right?
Yeah, and you can play as many missions as you want, of course.
Okay.
I guess that's true of any game.
Okay, cool. So, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about the premise of The Crew and give us kind of an overview of some of the basics of the rules?
Yeah, so I mean, at its heart, it's a trick-taking game. So if you know the basics of playing that, you know most of the rules of the crew. Someone plays a card in a certain suit. If the other players have that suit, they must play it. And whoever plays the highest card of the lead suit takes the trick. That's the basic concept behind The Crew. It's got 4 suits, 1 through 9. It's got a specific trump suit, which runs 1 through 4. The twist with The Crew, though, is it's actually a cooperative trick-taking game. And the way they accomplish that is there's actually 50 missions in the game that have different things you're trying to accomplish together. And I couldn't go into them all. That would take too long. But just to give a basic example, they have, like, for example, another deck that comes in the game that has all the regular cards, but they're smaller. And you deal out 4 of those, let's say. So each player has one of these cards, or they choose these actually from a display of 4. And let's say I get the red 3, the pink 3. Now that means that's my mission. That means over the course of this round, I have to take the pink 3. And maybe Eric has to take the blue 9 or something, right? So everyone has one of these cards, and we're all working together to make sure that happens. That's the basic idea. You're not allowed to communicate what's in your hand, although this has some very specific rules about little hints you can give. It's like you can say, I have, for example, only the red 9, the pink 9. I keep calling it red. The pink 9, you can indicate that, or you can say it's the highest of this suit that I have. It's the highest pink card I have. Things like that. There's a lot more to it. And there's a lot more than just those mission cards I talked about. Like I said, there's 50 missions. It could be something as like, hey, every trick in this game has to be taken with an 8 or lower. That could be a mission. But anyways, that's a rough example of how you play.
Okay, and so then to reiterate, the premise is you're a crew of people on a spaceship.
Yeah, I mean,
carrying about little missions.
The premise, is that each mission, you can actually read a story before it, and it like tells you the setup. Like the first mission is like you're training cadets at Space Academy, and then you play that mission, and then you go to mission 2. So the missions do get harder, 1 through 50, and each one's supposed to be you getting further into the solar system, looking for Planet 9.
Okay, so Eric, so that's interesting. Thinking about theme, that's within the confines of it being a trick-taking card game. It's an interesting constraint. How do you feel like it did when it comes to, in spite of that constraint, having the theme there of being a group of astronauts carrying out space missions? How did the theme come across?
Oh man,
super thematic.
Super thematic game.
Yeah.
No, I like to make a joke about this because this game is hilarious for me and Greg to play together with, because Greg doesn't care about theme at all. I love theme, but and so I make a joke out of insisting that all of the stories be read for this game when there is literally no point to it. It tells you this. It gives you this. This backstory for each one. The story is you're astronauts who are prepping and then going to and finding Planet 9. And but really, other than a couple of little moments, like for instance, there's one mission where one of the players, this is as thematic as it gets, one of the players is sick, so they can't win any tricks. That's the idea. So that is like, that's about as that level of thematic is as deep as it gets, is that kind of implementation. But it's hilarious to play the game in a thematic sense, because it's literally just a trick-taking game that has no theme to it whatsoever, other than some space pictures on the cards.
Do you think it would be better if they just completely left the theme out? If they just said this is a cooperative trick-taking game, and like, does the theme not just not add much, but does it detract?
I think it adds to it. I like it. I think it definitely will. It sells more because it has a theme, for sure. And that the game has to stand up on its own. The theme isn't going to do that. But like my take on theme, I've got a video coming out here. Maybe it's already out. I don't know. I've got a video coming out about theme and what that means to me. This is definitely it is thematic in the sense that the game tells you that there is a story, and you can, if you exercise your imagination, impose that story on your gameplay. It does not, as we discussed in High Frontier, implement that theme on a rules level. Very few games do, honestly. It's very, very hard to find games that from game that the theme comes from the game. Usually the theme comes from the player, at the direction of the art and the story that is given to you in the beginning. That's what this game is. The theme, any theme that you experience in this game, while I appreciate it and I think it's a nice touch, it has to come from me and my imagination. It's not directed from the rules of the game.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's open it up to both of you guys. Apart from the feeling, sort of a thematic narrative in the game, other than that aspect of it, in more general terms, how would you guys describe the feel of playing the crew.
Yeah, for me, I think this game's very puzzly. It's a very tense game. I think what I think we should note here about this game is actually this is our first trick-taking game that we're reviewing on this channel. I actually happen to be a big fan of trick-taking games, and I want to review more of these as we go. And this, I think, is the highest rated one on BGG at the moment. But it's funny for me because, I mean, everyone knows I like these big, heavy, thinky, economic type games. You know, that's generally what I go for. But trick-taking games kind of like take up a different category for me, in that I think of these as I don't want to get too detailed about it, but Richard Garfield has a thing about where he breaks down players into 4 categories, and it's not like you're always one or the other. But one of the categories he talks about is there's a flow player. There's a player who just likes kind of getting into the flow of the game and just kind of playing. They just enjoy that. And generally, that's not what I'm looking for in a game. I prefer something that's more thinky, I guess. But I really do like flow games at times. I like being in that flow state. And my go-to category for that is trick-taking games, 100%. That's the game I think of after I've had a big, long game of something else that I've been burning my brain on. I like that game at the end of the night where you're just kind of like shooting the breeze and playing cards. I actually really enjoy that. That being said, despite the fact that that's the true of most trick-taking games, I actually think this lacks that casual feel of a trick-taking game. It has elements of it in there for sure, but I think this one's just more intense, and it's a lot more puzzly. And the best way I can describe this game is I feel it takes the puzzle of a trick-taking game and it kind of distills it into a pure form, if that makes sense. I think if you play trick-taking games, that might make sense. I feel it kind of, because you're not allowed to talk about your hands either, I think it kind of like a little bit removes that casual shoot in the breeze feel of a trick-taking game and boils it all the way to the core puzzle of what a trick-taking game is. So I think that's what you're going to have to consider with this game. If you know trick-taking games, how much are you wanting to like just engage that puzzle a little more directly? That's how it feels to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm gonna come back to some of that later on in our review, but this is one point where Greg and I sync up perfectly because I'm the same exact way. I love really big. I like more Ameritrash games. I love the big epic games. But there's this trick-taking games for me are like the perfect filler. They are the game that I love to play afterwards, where it's not they're not super interaction game like Resistance or something like that. It's not a party game, but I find trick-taking games to be extremely friendly is still the wrong word, but like there's some camaraderie. You know, there's a team building element to competitive. I want to specify this: competitive trick-taking games.
I think for me, it's like it's comfortable. Maybe that's what you're looking.
There's a comfortable, yeah. There's a
maybe growing up in our culture where trick-taking games are kind of a part. Where my childhood, anyways. I think there's a comfort level there. That's just like a warm blanket playing a trick.
Totally. And you know what? It's not culture because I didn't grow up playing trick-taking games, but I love them. I think that they are just a fantastic. They are my preferred filler. That having been said, Greg's right. This is the most puzzly trick-taking game that I've ever played.
Yeah, I mean, for me, trick-taking games were definitely part of my background. In fact, when I think about my gaming history, I don't think I can think of a time before I was playing Pinochle. Like, like there's no time before that in my memory, because my family, my parents, my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles, all played Pinochle. And as soon as they needed an extra player, and I was old enough to hold cards in my hand, they taught me how to play Pinochle. So I kind of like grew up with these games. So for me, that I think that's a big part of why I like these games. It's just a really warm, fuzzy feel. And I'm saying this more as a trick-taking genre as a whole, and just happens to be the first trick-taking game we're covering. I do want to reiterate, while some of that is here, and there's definitely elements that carry over to this game, it does, like I said before, it does kind of like feel more puzzly than safe.
There's a difference, and I personally didn't want to go too much into the differences because they're going to come up in the good and the bad.
Sure, that makes sense.
Okay, so a question that comes to my mind then is, because if you're saying that it's a more distilled puzzle aspect of the trick-taking game, do you feel like that's because it's a co-op game? Like you have somebody else on the... I think that's what... I feel like I would be more serious about it and less casual if I felt like the other person who was my partner across the table was going to get mad at me for doing something stupid. Whereas if I was just playing by myself, I might be more casual. Anyway, I just wonder.
Sure,
That
that's an
occurred to me, if
interesting
you guys
idea.
think.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Definitely, I think part of it is the co-op angle changes the dynamic of the table.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that's the case. I think part of it is you're not allowed to talk about what's in your hand. I mean, it's not like you can talk about what's in your hand in a competitive trick-taking game.
But you
I
wouldn't
don't
want
know.
to.
I think part of maybe this is just my upbringing, but I find part of trick-taking games is also a little bit of the trash talking you do at the table,
Okay.
and getting mad at your partner for not playing the right card. I mean, that's to me part of the culture of trick-taking. When you're playing cooperative, that's not the case, and you are really concerned about like letting your team down because you could mess up the whole table by playing the wrong card. I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I haven't played The Crew as much as I have other trick-taking games from my childhood, but I don't know. It's just weird.
I think Mike is onto something there. I think that's a valid observation. I think that the co-op puts extra pressure on everybody because now, if we lose this mission, you're the guy who dropped the ball.
Yeah, that's probably true.
All right, let's go ahead next and talk about some of the priorities or strategies that a new player might have coming into the crew. Why don't we start with maybe Eric?
I don't have a lot here because it's just kind of generalized trick-taking game strategies.
Well, this would be a good chance for a refresher on those then, maybe.
Sure, yeah. Maybe Greg can talk more about that because he's more of a trick-taking generalist. I think that this game, any strategy that I would suggest in this game is count the cards, but only count the important suits. So this game makes it a little bit easier because you're not in a normal trick-taking game. You're trying to win as many tricks as possible. So you need to, if you were going to count the cards, which is the thing you should be trying to do in a trick-taking game, you need to keep track of all the suits, all the cards being played. In this, there is, like in the last game that we played, there was only 2 colors that we needed to pay attention to, and so keeping track, and there's only 9 cards per suit, so it's a smaller puzzle to solve. It is still very puzzly because you're now having to think about best play of each player around the table, not just best play for you. So at the very beginning of the game, missions are dealt out. So just keep track of, like, okay, do I have a pink mission? Greg over there has a pink mission as well, and Mike over there has a blue mission. So all I need to count is pink missions and blue missions, or pink cards and blue cards, and then we can figure out what's been played and what hasn't. So that's the major tip that I would give, is just count those important suits.
All right. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Eric that I think a lot of the strategies that you applied to The Crew apply to pretty much all trick-taking games. So this is kind of like a generalist trick-taking strategy, and that is books. I mean, there's whole books written on strategies for trick-taking games. There's no way we could go all into here. Not that I even know them. I mean, I grew up playing trick-taking games, and I felt there was like all these unspoken rules that I knew when I was younger, but I went years not playing them, so I feel like they're all kind of like buried in the back of my head. And as I'm playing, I'm like distantly remembering, oh wait, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't remember why. I'm not. It's not like I can give a full extensive strategy list here, but I've always felt trick-taking games, one of the most important skills to learn is learning when to sluff what to sluff. Sluffing is when you can play basically any card that you want, or you're playing off suit or something. That's not a dead hand for you. That's not a dead trick for you. Knowing what to get rid of is a big deal. The cards that you play off suit are important. And one of the big ones is generally, and again, none of these are going to apply universally, but I think knowing getting a void suit is a big deal. Meaning you run out of all cards in that suit. Because the thing with trick-taking games in general, and the crew, this is the true, you have to follow suit. But once you void a suit or two, now you have choices. It comes to you, you don't have a blue, now I can choose what do I want to slough off. And so knowing how to do that is kind of a big deal.
That's the most important thing, I would say. Like that, the timing of that is the most important aspect of winning any trick-taking game, is just knowing which cards to get rid of.
Yeah. And in regular trick-taking games, you would help your partner do that. But since this is a cooperative game, you can also learn how to help other players slough off their suits if they catch what you're trying to do, right? Because you can't talk about it. So you can play the card and hope that you realize that you're saying, hey, I'm putting this card down because I know you need to get rid of green or something like that. And that's another thing too, like if you're long in a suit, so long is like if you have a lot of cards of that suit. And if you think about the statistics of the way the deck is made out of, if you have like 3 or 4 cards or more of the same suit, that means you're long in the suit. When you're long in a suit, you can run that. You can play all those cards until no one is playing that card, and you know that no one has that color out. Now, that one green I have left is going to go through, and I can win that trick with that one green if that's my mission. That's something I want to keep in mind. Also, you can, instead of just sloughing off the void of suit, you can slough off high numbers that you don't want to win with. This 9 blue is dangerous because it's going to ruin a mission if I play this. So let me slough off my high card. That I think that's a big, kind of a difficult thing to wrap your mind around. It's something I can't put into bullet points, but knowing how to slough off your cards is a big deal. I do agree with Eric. Tracking cards is a big deal. Knowing which suits people are out of is a particularly important point. And knowing where the high cards are. How many 9s and 8s have been played. So all that's going to be like how you win your missions. That, for example, I need to win my mission with this blue one, or something of that nature. So that's basic ideas, and maybe I'm completely off base on them, but that's kind of how I remember the strategies of trick-taking games.
Okay. Yeah, all of those sound pretty much like, rather than like simple strategies to implement, more like skill sets that you can at least keep in mind to try to develop. It doesn't, there's not a lot of specific advice there, but I don't see how there could be. It sounds like you just have to play it, be aware of those principles, and start noticing how to get better at them, maybe.
I will say one thing that this has, one thing that this game has that others don't is the unique form of communication, which I want to go into that a little bit more, which is you can play a card in front of you at any time when you're between tricks. You can put a card down in front of you, and you can put a little indicator on it. If you put it at the top, it means that's the highest card of a series of that card that you have, of that suit. You can put it in the middle, which means that's the only card of that suit that you have, and you can put it at the bottom, which means it's the lowest card in that suit that you have. But one little thing that a lot of new players get wrong is they will put down let's say they have all they have in their hand is a blue 9, and they'll put a blue 6, and they'll put the blue 6 down, but they'll put the indicator at the top, implying that that's their highest 6 or something like that. But no, that's their only 6. So you can some cards can't be communicated.
I think that's illegal, right? I believe.
No, you can only if that's your only color, you have to put it in the middle.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So I don't think they can put it at the top. That would be illegal.
No, I know, but I'm saying sometimes that goes wrong. Sometimes people
gotcha.
put it in the wrong
You're
position.
saying it's an easy mistake.
Mistake to make.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's an interesting little bit of information that you can put out, and that knowing when to give that information is also just part of getting better at the game.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, that's another good point, because that's one factor of this game that's not in other trick-taking games, and that is how you communicate cards. And I think knowing which card, again, I think all this is experience. I think you're right. You can't really bullet point the strategies out. I think it just comes from experience. But knowing what card to communicate is a big deal, because sometimes you want to convey a lot of information with it. And sometimes you don't put the obvious one out because you want the players to look at it and go, what is he trying to tell me? Why did he put the pink 2 out when that has nothing to do with any of the missions? But if you think it through, you realize, oh, I see. He wants us to know that's his only one. So if we play it this way, he voids that suit, and then we can play. I mean, you can actually give more information than is completely obvious.
It makes me think of my grandfather played bridge and dominoes, and the amount
At the same time?
I think so. Well, he'd play bridge in the paper, like they'd have the little puzzles and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But he could go around. I remember he could go around, about halfway through a game of dominoes and tell you what everyone had in their hand, and get very mad at people like across from him. If they were, playing the wrong thing, because
that's exactly what a trick taking game is like.
Yeah, because he knew exactly.
Like my grandma yelling at me.
Right. So maybe this is
that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun of trick taking games. You're really good at it. It's one of those games that that you can just, you want to play with family members.
It's fun. It's fun. I just to give you an example, my grandma always talk about, because she was like super into pinochle, but all her sisters were too. But if I would like pull out a card because it was obvious what I'd play and just kind of hold it out, waiting for my turn to come, she would get mad at me.
Right.
Because she would say, you're giving away information when you pull that card out ahead of time. You make it obvious the choice. You're just giving too much information away about your hand.
Didn't you also say that about even sorting your cards? Like sorting your cards, she would get mad at you.
Yes, because there was actually one friend of the family we played with who never sorted his cards, because he didn't want you to know like all my spades are coming from here or my hearts are coming from here. So like even the way you sort your cards is kind of a big deal, because you don't want to pull all your, like if you always go high to low, then I know if I pull over, all my hard cards are over here, and I don't know. There's all these weird things that if you got really into these, you could.
Like if I drew a card and put it on the left side of my deck, once I drew
something
it,
like
it was a high card or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe the Crew will be the game that your grandkids talk about as you guys being, almost telepathic about in the same way. So maybe it's the millennial version of dominoes or whatever. All right, next, let's talk about the good and the bad. What did the Crew do well? What could it have done better? And let's start out with the good. What did you like about it, Greg?
So I feel like we're generally reviewing trick-taking games in general over the Crew, but let's talk about what the Crew does well in particular. One of the issues that you can have with particularly well-established trick-taking games is what I've been talking about. If you come in as a new player, you're almost, at times it can almost ruin the chemistry the table has, because there are a lot of these unspoken rules. There's this kind of this communication that the table's built up over the years, that when a new player comes in, he's like, I don't want to be partnered with that guy. He doesn't know what he's doing, or like he kind of ruins. He sets, he or she kind of ruins the chemistry
dynamic. Yeah.
So, the dynamic that's going on. So the thing I like about the Crew is I think of it in many ways as a trick-taking tutorial. I said the missions go from 1 to 50, and they go up an ascending difficulty level. You can just play starting from mission 1 and work your way through it, and I feel you are learning trick-taking principles as you play. So it completely, I think, gets rid of that whole newbie issue, because you can just play on the easy missions, and they're learning as they go. I think if you played through all 50 missions, you would be a pretty good trick-taking player in other competitive trick-taking games by the time you got done with these. So it just feels like a step-by-step tutorial. Yet, on top of it being very newbie-friendly, I think it's incredibly challenging for even veteran trick-taking players. Like I said, I don't play trick-taking games anywhere near as much as I did when I was a child, but I can feel like my muscles, my brain just being flexed as I play this, and like I am discovering the edges of my ability to play trick-taking games. Right, this game like pushes that, because it's the pure puzzle of it, and there's sometimes I'm thinking like, oh man, I feel like I should know what I need to do here, but I can't quite get my head wrapped around it. So it's still challenging even if you're a trick-taking veteran, I think. Another thing, we talk about cooperative games. We talk about in the pandemic review about an alpha gamer issue with a lot of cooperative games, because everything is open information. I always feel like you can kind of categorize those games into that, and this type of game where everyone has their own personal information that you can't communicate. So this is the latter. So that does solve that issue. Everyone has their own personal information. You can't alpha game this. So there's that. And one thing I think is neat about this game is there are 50 missions. And there's fan-made missions. I think they just came up with an expansion that has more missions that you can play. So I really think this game could have released with one mission. Like, it could have been something like I said earlier. Like, every time you play, you turn over 4 cards, and those are your missions you're taking. And I think this game would have been fine, honestly. I really think it would still have been a fun game with just that one mission. But the fact that they give you 50 just gives this game so much variety that you can just play this for a long time and never play the same mission twice. And you can choose. You don't have to go 1 through 50. In fact, I don't think that's the best way to do it. You can just choose, like, hey, how tough do we want to play today? Let's pick something in the 30s or 40s. Or, nah, I want something easier. Let's play something lower. You know what I mean? You can kind of choose your difficulty level. So the fact that they kind of just crammed in all that customization and replayability when I don't think they really had to, just really ups this game for me. So
let me ask you, how much difference do the missions make? I mean, do you feel like between one mission and another, you're playing not just along the linear scale of difficulty, but like, are you playing a totally different game when you're playing different missions?
I think so. I mean, obviously, some of them have some overlap.
Sure.
For example, some of them, like I talked about the mission cards, like the first mission's 1 mission card. And by the time you get in the 40s, you're playing with 10 mission cards. So obviously, there's some overlap with those.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of cards where it's just like, this player can never trick a trick, you know? And while it still feels, the core is the same, the puzzle is different enough that, yes, I think that each mission is pretty different from each other.
All right.
Well, hold on there. But are you talking about like the way it feels, Micah? Because it certainly doesn't change the way the game feels. It changes the difficulty. But it seems like in your question you were asking, does it feel like a completely different game? And I would absolutely say no. It doesn't feel like a different game. It feels like it has the same feel. It's just like a slightly different puzzle that needs to be solved in the same game.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of it as it does feel the core is the same, but I do feel if the puzzle is different enough that each mission, I mean, some of the missions do feel completely different to me. Like, I feel like I'm solving a newer puzzle. It's not just the same puzzle, but with more pieces I have to think about. Like, some of them
it's a
feels
different
like
puzzle. It just doesn't. It just always feels like the same game to me. It doesn't.
Yeah, but I guess some of them I feel like I'm exercising different brain muscles than I do with, like, for example, the mission card ones. Like, they all kind of feel the same. They just get more difficult. But then there's ones like, you have to win tricks with this card, or this player can't take this, or you have to take the first and the last suit, or something like that. To me, those feel different enough that I feel like, I don't know a better way to describe this, but like different grooves in my brain are being used on those missions. So the core feels the same, but the puzzle feels different enough that I feel it's fresh, I guess. It feels fresh.
Well, I mean, far be it from me to dispute with Greg's brain grooves.
Yeah, well, it sounds like then the missions, at the very least, certainly are different in difficulty, and then possibly different to a degree in feel, although your mileage may vary. All right. Eric, let's go to you. What did you like about the crew?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about how it's got a tutorial feel. It's takes you from 1 to 50 on skill level through trick-taking games in general, so you don't really need to prep people on any of the rules, because they're going to, in fact, that's the way I prefer to play it. I prefer to play it like, oh, here are the real basic rules, but I'm not going to give you any tips on anything because you're going to learn them as we go.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that's how you like to play competitive games.
Yeah, that's how I like it. Yeah, even Pandemic. It's like, I'm not going to tell you anything.
Yeah.
Also, when you solve a particularly sticky problem, this game does provide a very good reward. You feel very clever when you pull it off. And that is shared around the table. So you feel like you were all clever. And so that's a great feeling to have, that one that is quite rare in board games. There's also a component to this game that you could almost, well, it's true, and I have jumped ahead to play the harder difficulty ones. That's fine. But I actually think it would be a lot of fun to have a regular Like maybe with your normal game group, you get together, you play a big game, and then at the end, you pick up and you treat the crew like a campaign game, and you see how far you can get. That would be a lot of fun to start at zero and just go and see how far you can push it in the story. And of course, the story is like, it's fun for me, but it's it's not important to the actual game. So in that sense, that leads to my last thing that I really enjoy about this, which is the just one more factor, which is like, when I'm done with this game, I frequently just want to let's do just one more. I think a lot of people feel that way because the games are short, and there is that reward at the end if you can pull it off. And if you can't pull it off, you want to try that again because you were this close. So there's that cool feeling that this game provides.
That's an interesting idea of doing, kind of trying to work your way through. It's like if you maybe had a regular pen and paper RPG group that got together, you guys could all play a hand of the crew every time you got together at whatever your next number was, and see if in addition to whatever your RPG was, you could also try to, as a group, go through the until you all TPK'd. So, all right.
So you get to go through two hands, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
exactly. If Eric is your GM, you play two
right. Right, exactly. Okay. All right. Now let's go to what the crew could have done better. What did you not like about it, Eric?
Well, I think in part its strength is also its weakness, because while the co-op angle is so cool, it also detracts some from the casual and, Greg would say, comfortable feel of a trick-taking game. It just doesn't. It changes the way it feels so much that it no longer feels like I can relax after a big game and just play a few hands, and all I need to worry about is my information. It feels more intense than that, probably because you were saying too, Micah, about how we all got to be in the ball here, otherwise we're going to lose this one. And it doesn't fill the same niche. It requires more of you. So the co-op thing, while I think that this is a fantastic game, I also think that it is fantastic in a different way than a standard trick-taking game. And sometimes I don't want to play a game that requires this much of me, and I just want to play an end-of-the-night palate cleanser with a normal trick-taking game. So I wouldn't even consider this my favorite trick-taking game, but I would consider it a very, very, very good game, just because it does very different things. To that end, it suffers from some of the same problem that let's see, where did we talk about this? The no talking issue. What did we just review?
Codenames we talked about.
We talked about it in Codenames, but we also talked
about the mind.
In the mind, where the mind has this issue where it's like, it seems like the rules are a little at odds with the fun of the play. And I don't think that that's as big of an issue in the crew, but it does suffer from that thing where and you touched on this before, Michael, where you're talking about how in a regular trick-taking game, I don't want to give any information away because it's my stuff, but I am incentivized to give information and talk about stuff in a co-op game because that will help us to win. And so there's that thing where you can kind of you can come up with it incentivizes you to come up with a way of giving information that breaks the rules. So there's that thing again that has come up. Also, what did I write down there? Oh, right. I am not 100% sure about the balance of this game. First off, in the two-player version of this game, I wouldn't recommend this game if you play primarily two-player games, because the Jarvis mod for it makes it feel almost like a solo game. Like one player is playing two people, and the other player just is kind of like just has to follow the lead and doesn't get to really make any big decisions. That having been said, there's a couple of other regular missions in the game that I'm just curious about, and maybe this is just my ignorance as a as a trick-taking player. But like, there's one in here. I think it's mission. Yeah, it's mission 16 and 17. So technically, the idea is that you're supposed to be ramping up in difficulty. I feel like 17 is significantly easier than 16 because as I read the rules, 16 means that you have to win you have to go through the entire tricks, but none of those tricks can be won with a 9. Whereas in 17, you only need to technically win 2 tricks. They just have to be the right ones, and none of those tricks can be won with a 9. Now that might be more rulesy than, but my point is just to highlight one particular part where I am curious if 16 is actually easier than 17, and if that happens later on in the game, I don't know. It just feels like there might be some.
I don't
balance
understand why you
issues there.
think 16 is easier than 17. 17 is the exact same mission with added restrictions.
No, but the point is that you have to play. See how there's no missions that have to be won on 16. That means you have to play unless I'm reading this wrong, you have to play all the cards in your hand. Nothing particularly has to be won by any player, but nothing can be won with a 9.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you have to play through everybody has to play through their entire hand. Whereas in the one with 2, you don't have to play your entire hand. You just have to win.
You're saying you can end it. You can end it earlier.
Yes.
Therefore,
yes.
lessening the chance
I've
you
done
can win.
I've done
that
these
makes sense.
two. I've done these two, and 16 seems really hard compared to 17. But
I get where you're coming from.
There just might be some balance issues there. I don't know. And that brings me to my last thing, which is this is a very random game. So if the hands get dealt out and the missions get dealt out in a certain way, it can be super easy to win a mission, or it can be nearly impossible. So the range of difficulty is quite big.
All over the place.
It's all over the place with any given mission.
Okay.
Which I don't have a huge problem with randomness. But it is something to bear in mind.
Greg, what about you? What did you not like about the crew?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Eric was talking about was actually what I was going to talk about. I do agree that I do miss. I feel like maybe we're overstating all of this, and maybe other gamers who play this are not feeling the same way. But yeah, I do kind of miss that trick-taking feel, that casual nature. So I think you do have to approach this game as not a trick-taking game in a way. Like you just kind of have to see it as a different category. And that's fine. I think as long as you do that, that's fine. The other thing, so my pluses I talked about, the nice part of cooperative games that have hidden information like this one does is it prevents the game from just being that basically a solo game that's being played by 4 people, right? And the alpha gamer issue, if you have that issue. It does prevent that. However, the flip side, the negative to these types of cooperative games is that you're missing that communication. I think Eric talked about this. One of the nice things of cooperative games is the idea that as a team, you're sitting there and you're kind of hatching a strategy and you're working together. But when you remove communication, you can't do that. It's all very subtle communication. So that is kind of missing from this. So as a cooperative game, I think I prefer it this way better, but do note that
yeah, it kind of begs the question, right? If you're going to cooperate, what form will your cooperation take, right? And it would have to be, if you can't talk, it would have to be.
Yeah, it's just more the way you play your card. It's very subtle communication, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the cards you play and the clues you give. So, but there's less of that really deep thinking 5 turns out and like, oh, someone comes with a brilliant plan, because you're very limited to what you can say. So, and that's okay. I'm not saying it's a huge negative, but it's something to note with these types of cooperative games in general. You are missing that type of community effort to a certain degree. I do want to talk about that 2-player variant. It's okay. I'm glad it exists, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't get this game if 2-player is what you were mostly going to play with. I think it's telling they didn't put it on the box. It's just 3 to 5 in the box. So yeah, I agree with Eric. It just feels like the commander has so much control over that it's just not fun to me. The final one I want to talk about, and this is the one that Eric didn't mention, but this is kind of the biggest deal to me. I want to show you something. So this is, I don't know how this is going to show up on camera.
I'll probably just screenshot it.
No, let me show you this one here. So it's like, can you see the difference in those colors?
I can, but it's subtle.
Yeah. So this is green and blue. All right. My eyesight's pretty good, but I find that these colors look very similar to each other. And let me tell you why that's an issue. Whenever I get a trick-taking game like this, the first thing I think about is, man, I want to take this out to my dad, and I want to play this game with him because he likes trick-taking games, and I like trying to find some kind of game I can play with him. But the problem is he's getting old. His eyesight's not that great. On top of it, he's green-blue colorblind. So,
well,
so you got these cards, and so for example, I brought out diamonds to him. To me, diamonds has a similar issue, not for the color, but it's hard to see the suits from across the table. This is the same deal. The suits are there in the corner, but they're so thin and faint. And this is why I have an issue with this. Cards have been around for hundreds of years, and I feel like we've solved this a long time ago, right?
It's frustrating, right?
It's like there's numbers in the corner with the suits for when it's in your hand. And yes, it should be in all four corners. Maybe that's something regular cards could do better. And then in the middle, you put the suits large so that when they're laying on the table, I don't have to ask you what was being played because I can see it. And so it's always frustrating to me when something we've solved so long ago is just such an issue with people when they design a game. And the reason is they're trying to put their theme on there.
Yeah.
These space theme thing. And I'm just like, you can do it. Like, for example, Tichu and Haggis are great examples of cards that look like a traditional playing card, and but still have their own theme kind of like wrapped up in the suits. I don't know. This always irritates me because when I think of trick-taking games, I always think of, I mean, I guess it's kind of a stereotype, but I always think of like some older people that I want to play trick-taking games with, right? But as you get older, your eyesight goes, so you need to make sure that your cards are easily visible from across the table. Now, I think in the second edition, they actually shadowed those symbols in the corner to make them pop out a little more. But I still am annoyed that there's nothing in the center of the card.
Feels like somebody should have caught that, though. It's like a missed
and
opportunity because it's such a simple thing to fix, right?
Yeah, just make these a little more. I mean, why are they so close together as green and blue? I mean, it's just, I don't know. That one's annoying because it seems like such a simple thing to fix, and it affects who I'm going to play with this so much.
Yeah,
that's why that's annoying to me. So I just want to point that out. So those are my negatives on the game.
Let's give our final thoughts now then on the crew. Anything that you guys want to say about it that you have not yet said? Would you recommend it? What do you rate it? Does it go on our shelf? Eric?
I was a little torn on this one because I think that the goods are really good, but I had a lot of negative things to say about it. But overall, I think that the goods outweigh that. But I had to think about it a little bit to come to that conclusion. I would recommend it for anybody who's interested in trick-taking games. Maybe a newcomer to trick-taking games, but primarily for people who like co-op games. If you are a co-op person, this is a great short co-op game that's not going to fill up an entire table. Could be played at the end of a big game of Pandemic or something along those lines. Could be good for that. I rated a 7.5, and I do think that's pretty high on my rating system, and I do think it belongs on the shelf.
All right. Well, so we're going to have to get into that. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I like this game, actually, despite my rant on the color of the cards. If you can get over that, and you can get over the idea that this is not your typical trick-taking feel, there's actually a really good game here. For the amount of time you spend on this game, which is such a short game, there's a lot of puzzle to be had. So in a way, this is kind of my kind of filler. It's a thinky filler. Now, it is a co-op game, which always dings it for me a little bit because I'm not as high on co-op games. As far as cooperative games go, I do enjoy this one. I think I give this a 7, so I'm pretty close with Eric there. And yeah, I could definitely see this going on the shelf. I'd be curious what Eric wants to kick off.
Yeah, that was the hard part for me, was looking at what...
the shelf is getting harder to deal with. I'm
is.
starting to like most of the games on here. So
Me too. Yeah. Well, obviously, I am willing to get rid of Ticket to Ride for this.
So
But
here. No,
if
actually,
you're not
Eric, let's
willing
talk.
to, if you're
talk
not willing
about
to talk
Ticket to
about, okay, let's talk about Ticket
Let's
to
talk about Ticket to Ride. Because I'm kind of getting tired of this coming up all the time.
Ride.
And while I feel losing Ticket to Ride, we're losing a good, solid entry level game. I think I'm okay with the Crew just getting on the list. Just one to get rid of the game that you're having such an issue with. And I gave Ticket to Ride a 7.5. I give this a 7. It's only I just like the
Close.
fact that it's a longer game, and I don't like the idea of having 2 co-ops. So
No, that's almost why I didn't. Yeah, well, that's almost why I didn't want to put it on, put Ticket to Ride on my options here, because I don't think that it's not even close to fitting the same kind of what Ticket to Ride does. And I do respect Ticket to Ride does a thing that is important, especially when you've got new gamers.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, I would be willing to discuss King of Tokyo. I
That's
know that
another
it does.
one.
I know that it's a beer
it seems like if you were going for that, it'd be King of Tokyo or Codenames, probably, right?
Yeah, Codenames is a party game though,
Yeah.
and this is not a party game.
I
King
agree.
of Tokyo, granted, it's not. It's also not a beer and pretzels dice chucker, but I don't know. It kind of feels like the same level of engagement
Sure.
that King of Tokyo requires. This game
And
requires.
and just to be clear, I don't think the games have to be a 1-for-1 replacement. I don't
No,
think,
and I,
we need a
they
dice
won't be
checker
able to
there.
be.
But I'm okay with King of Tokyo. In fact, I'll tell you why, because I was looking at this list today, and there's very few games on here right now that are below a 7 for me. It's getting to that point, except King of Tokyo. I think I gave that a 6. I think I give Side the 6.5. But King of Tokyo losing would definitely, for me anyways, up the general quality all around. And it's still a light game I can teach to a lot of people, the Crew. So I'm
Yeah,
okay with that.
I'm not a huge fan of King of Tokyo.
Yeah,
So.
neither was I. I was just kind of more keeping it on there because it was feeling us kind of
Sure.
a niche. But I think the Crew does an okay job at it enough that I'm okay with it. Let's kick off King of Tokyo.
Well, we'll have to have the Ticket to Ride discussion again some later.
Yeah,
date.
I know it's got to go eventually. I just kind of want to replace it with something that does fill that niche, actually.
Sure, I
There's not many others that do that.
All right, well, so we are going to replace King of Tokyo with the Crew. I'm a little surprised that none of you wanted to get into the whether Pluto is a planet controversy in this video.
Pluto is not a planet, unfortunately.
Pluto
I
is
love
not
Pluto.
a planet.
I love
Neil
Pluto.
deGrasse Tyson has spoken. We'll take it up with him.
All right. Well, I just threw that in so that people will have something
Nibiru,
to argue
however,
with you guys about.
Nibiru.
Mhm.
No, I mean by saying that Pluto is not a planet, we may actually get views on this video. Think of all the people are going to hate watch this. So
Yeah. They said it's
And
not a planet,
by
not me.
mentioning Nibiru, we'll get all the conspiracy theorists to watch
that's
it.
right.
Yeah. Wonderful. Just what we need.
Yeah.
All right.
Branching
So, what are we going to talk about next time, guys?
More
Terraforming
more
Mars,
sci-fi.
right?
More sci-fi,
More sci-fi?
stuff with terraforming
What is it?
Mars. Terraforming Mars.
Terraforming Mars. All right. So, our third installment of our sci-fi trilogy that we're doing. You can tune in next time for Terraforming Mars. Remember to subscribe to us to check out our videos. We're now coming out with videos basically every week with you guys 2 channels, as well as our main reviews here on this channel. And give our video a like. And if you'd like to comment on how Eric and Greg are wrong about Pluto or in cahoots with the deep state when it comes to Nibiru, or if you just want to describe the warm, fuzzy, blanket-like feelings that you get from playing the Crew or watching our videos, feel free to leave us a comment below. But look for Terraforming Mars next time. Until then, this has been a piece of the action.
Okay, well, considering the first 2 of those are people,
I know, right?
I think it's Kelicam, I believe. But that sounds really familiar.
Micah,
What was the
does
third
that sound
one?
familiar to you? The third one was Herc. It's like a Klingon word. HUR''Q.
Yeah. I don't know. That sounds more Klingon to me than Kelicam. So
Yeah. So you're going with C.
I'll go with C.
What are you going with, Eric?
I'm going with D. It's definitely Kelicam.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, Kelicam. I remember That shows up really early on the one where Riker has to. Actually, it might show up even earlier than that in Something of Glory, I think, where they capture the two Klingon guys who build a gun out of their belt buckles.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it was definitely. I think it was definitely in the one where they have that cultural exchange
They
program.
had the cultural exchange, yeah.
I love that episode. The one where Riker has
14.2 kilocams. That was a great episode.
That was a great episode. It was one of the first ones that really started fleshing out Klingon culture.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really fleshed out before that.
No, they weren't. And they were still trying to, for a long time, they were trying to downplay Picard. Picard was just supposed to be like the captain, and the real hero of the story was going to be Riker, and so they were going to Kirk up Riker. And so you can see that through the first season and into the second, where Riker is the one who gets to go down on the away missions and have all the exciting adventures, and he's the ladies' man and everything. And then they realized later on that, like, wait a minute, Patrick Stewart is a really good actor.
Yeah.
We should use him.